What is going on, everybody, and welcome to today's video. It's been a while since I've done one of these. This is going to be one of those fun ones where I'm going to be recapping, breaking down, mini reviewing, and also ranking all of the new movies that I saw for the month of June, which, just looking at my list here, this is a pretty interesting month. There were some high highs, some low lows, some of my favorite films I've seen so far this year, some of the worst films I've seen so far this year. So again, this is going to be fun. This will be available, obviously, if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, but also it will be available to listen to in podcast form. I started my podcast about 2.5, 3 months ago. So if you're interested in listening to this breakdown, it will be available on Spotify, Apple, and all the different places you can listen to podcasts. So this is going to be fun, man. Before we get into it, again, just a little house cleaning. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much. Like, share your list of the movies you saw. How would you rank them? Just share your thoughts about those films, and also consider subscribing to the channel for more videos like this. But of course, if you're listening to this on podcast form, I know it's a little bit different. I think you can like a podcast, you can share a podcast, but you can also follow the podcast. So if you can do all that, I would really appreciate it. So let me go ahead and pull up my Letterboxd. If you all are not following me on Letterboxd, do yourself a favor, check me out there. If I don't have a long form breakdown or review of a particular movie, or a short video, 2-3 minute video, giving my thoughts about it on YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram, what have you, 10 out of 10 times, I'm probably going to have a written review available on my Letterboxd. So that's what we're going to be, as you can see on the screen now, that's what we're going to be looking at as far as my thoughts and my recaps and the list of movies that I took down. So check me out on Letterboxd. It's some good times over there. Some good times. So let me pull up my diary here, scroll down to the bottom, and we're going to take a look at all these movies. Now, again, you will be seeing some rewatches on this list, but again, we're just really focusing on the new releases. So with that being said, starting the beginning of the month of June, my very first movie was Dangerous Animals, which I believe is still limited in theaters, and it will be available on Shudder sooner rather than later. Fun story here. This was a movie that I saw in theaters, which was pretty cool, but I was also given the opportunity to host the movie, if you want to call it that. The PR team promoting this movie with a collaboration of Bloody Disgusting and Letterboxd, actually, some PR person reached out and said, hey, we're going to be showing this in, St. Louis. We would love for you to host the screening. So when people sign up, you can introduce yourself and, have them sit in the theater and then collect their thoughts afterward and share the data after that. So I did that, but it wasn't the best turnout. I'll just say that. But it was the first time that they've done this in St. Louis. So hopefully we get more, and I hopefully get to host more. But neither here nor there. I did experience this in theaters, and as you all can see, I gave it a 3.5, or maybe it was like a 3.8. But I was very positive on this film. I thoroughly enjoyed it. As you can see from my little rundown here, I said it was like a combination of Wolf Creek, this is an Australian film, by the way, this Dangerous Animals, but it reminded me a little bit of Wolf Creek meets Jaws, where the serial killer takes out his victims by feeding them to sharks. So if you're not sold on that sentence alone, I don't know what's up with you, but no, this is a really well done film, man. It was thrilling, it was exhilarating, it was haunting, but also had some really interesting, commentary on this kind of idea of these animals that people keep deep down inside and how those animals come out in different ways. So really cool concept. It was mostly one location on Jai Courtney, who's the killer in this film, who was great in this film, by the way. I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was just really well paced, really well put together, and once you get to the end, you're just like, the final girl, the main character, was phenomenal. Like one of my favorite final girls in recent memory. But really good film. Like I said, I believe it's still available in theaters in limited release, but also keep an eye out for it when it becomes streaming available on Shudder. Hopefully, like I said, I would imagine pretty soon rather than later. But very much enjoy Dangerous Animals and highly recommend you all check it out. All right, next on the list, June 4th, we saw Ballerina, which I'm going to say this now, directed by Lynn Wiseman, but some of us know that Chad Stahelski, the director of all 4 John Wicks, had a big part on the reshoots, but neither here nor there. I am shocked that this film didn't do that well. If I'm not mistaken, I think it bombed pretty heavily at the box office, and I believe it was going to be available to stream in the next week or two at the time of this recording, which I think is going to find its audience in the streaming sphere, whether it's available, on VOD, but then eventually, I'm assuming Netflix will pick it up in 4 or 5 months. But I enjoyed this, man. Like a lot of the criticism that I heard about this movie, more so and not everyone, but a lot of the stuff I saw, a lot of people were saying, it's not John Wick. It's not John Wick. John Wick did this better. This, I'm like, I hear what you're saying, because obviously it's a spinoff. And obviously, if you've seen the film or saw the promotions, Keanu was involved in the film a lot more than I was anticipating. But it's not John Wick's story. And I liked, the character that we got here by Ana de Armas. And I thoroughly enjoyed the action. It's not perfect by any means, but I had a fun time with it, man. Like, I think this is one of the better spinoffs that I've seen in a while. And also, compared to the Continental, which I wasn't a big fan of, I really enjoyed Ballerina. I don't know if we'll ever see the character. I believe her name was Eve, played by Ana de Armas, who was also great. I don't know if we'll see her again, maybe in John Wick 5, maybe in another. I don't think she's going to get her own solo movie, but maybe, she might be included in the Kane movie. But we'll see. I enjoyed it. I had fun with it, but I don't know. I feel like people were being a little bit too harsh by comparing it one for one to the John Wick films. But neither here nor there. Ballerina, solid film on my list. Next on my list, one of my favorites so far this year. And as I've said in my review, this is one of my favorite, it is my favorite animated film so far this year. That is Predator, Killer of Killers. I thoroughly enjoyed this film. I am such a big fan of what Dan Trachtenberg has been doing with this franchise so far and kind of giving it new life because, and this is my personal opinion, the first film is excellent. Second film is fun, but everything else has just been kind of hit or miss for me. But this one, his film he did in 2022, I think, was Prey on Hulu, which I wish I could have saw it in theaters, but love Prey. Really enjoyed Killers of Killers. Really excited for Predator Badlands later this year. And I'm just like, I don't want to say Kevin Feige, but I like that they're giving him the reins, giving him the keys to tell these stories of these predators. And he's, with this film in particular, the different anthology, a samurai, a Viking, and a pilot. I really enjoyed this. It didn't hold back on the violence, the visceral nature of the Predator. It was very well animated, which it did take me a little bit to get used to animation style, but I thoroughly end up really loving this. The style, the look, the aesthetic, the vibe, everything they had going for it. And the door that this film opens, the possibilities of this franchise are endless. And again, I'm really stoked for Badlands later this year, but I love Predator Killer of Killers, which is available on Hulu to stream. Highly recommend you all check it out if you're a fan of the Predator universe, or even if you're not. I don't think you have to, there is something at the end that does tie into the greater universe, but I thoroughly enjoyed this film, and I can't wait to see what Dan Trachtenberg does, because there's one more secret project that he hasn't announced, which I think ties into that post-credit scene. But check it out if you guys haven't already. Next on the list, we have The Life of Chuck, Mike Flanagan's new film, of course, based on a Stephen King novel. I am such a big fan of Mike Flanagan. I've seen all of his theatrical films. One of my favorites, Dr. Sleep, Oculus, Hush. Big fan of his work. And Gerald's Game is another one that comes to mind. But the stuff that he's done on television, on Netflix in particular, with Haunting on Hill House, Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, didn't like The Midnight Club, but The Fall of the House of Usher. The man is one of my favorite directors, the storytellers in Hollywood. And I was so excited for this film. And I hadn't read the short story this is based upon. And I kind of avoided the trailers, but I kind of knew it was, I don't want to say it reminded me of like a Forrest Gump type of narrative based on a trailer, but it has that sentiment, right? About like life and different, following someone's life and the ups and downs or what have you. But man, I love Life of Chuck, man. Like, this is a beautiful, heartbreaking, encouraging, inspiring film with some really great performances. The way, and if you guys haven't seen it, because it didn't do that well at the box office, but I would imagine that's going to be another one that's going to hopefully find its second life in VOD and streaming. But the way it's broken down is so interesting. Starts off in a very dreadful matter. Then the story unfolds about who is Chuck, played by Tom Hiddleston, and we learn about his highs and lows and experiences. And it's just one of those films that hit me at a certain point in my life where it's just like you're looking back at all the events that led you up to this point and all the small moments, the appreciation of life, the small moments of life, and taking advantage of the moment. It's like there's so many things that I loved about it, on top of the great direction, on top of the message and the story. So again, like I said, I know a lot of people didn't see the film, and it is, I wonder why they did release it at the time that they did in June. I thought it would have maybe found a better audience at the beginning of this year, or maybe at the tail end of the year is kind of difficult too with all the Oscar movies. But it's a weird spot to release the film, but nonetheless, I loved it. I hope you all check it out if you haven't already. But very big fan of Life with Chuck, and very big fan of Mike Flanagan. Really excited to see his Carrie series and all the other stuff he has working with his new deal with Amazon. But moving on to our next movie here, and that is, man, I did not anticipate this to be so divisive. We're talking about The Materialists. Now, this is brought to us by Celine Song, who I'm a big fan of. Past Lives, one of my favorite films in the past decade. Love that movie. Pure masterpiece in my eyes. Like one of the best directorial debuts in a long time. But she's great. She wrote this, she directed this based on, different various life experiences on her account, starring Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, and Pedro Pascal. Man, I wanted to love this movie, but I did not like it much at all. As I talked about in my review, and again, you can check out my full thoughts on it. And again, you can even read my Letterboxd review, but the craftsmanship's there. It was well made. It's a great score, great soundtrack, all those productional elements really worked, but the first half of the film really worked too. I like it played into what I thought the film was going to be more about, which is kind of a rom-com with a little bit of drama going on. But that first half really worked for me. Pedro and Dakota Johnson's character, I like their chemistry. I like the aspect of her being a dating coach and the expectations in the dating industry, or expectations that people have, especially at a certain point in their life, and depending on their age. And all that stuff was really working for me. But then we get to the second and third act where it focuses more on Dakota and Chris Evans' relationship. And all of that stuff to me just did not work from a performance standpoint, by the way it was written, by just a lot of the stuff in that second half just kind of fell short to me. And I just didn't really enjoy myself. And as it, again, like I said, went on, it just became really apparent that Chris Evans and Dakota did not have good chemistry. And it's the second half and the third act really focuses on their relationship. And you got to be bought into the relationship and bought into their love. And I just wasn't sold on that. So I didn't anticipate it being so divisive, because there's people that felt similar to my thoughts, but there were people like on the complete opposite that love this film and were like defending it and making up excuses on why it's so good, and to each their own. But I did not enjoy the Materialists, and you'll see where I'll rank it once we get towards that point of this breakdown. But on to the very next day, actually, I saw, which is a streaming movie on Apple TV Plus by the name of Echo Valley. This one stars Julianne Moore, great actress, big fan of her work, and also, I don't want to say up and coming because she's been doing this for probably over a decade now, but Sydney Sweeney, the first time I was exposed to her was on Euphoria, and from there, she's been in a couple other big, well-known films, some on streaming, she's been on other shows and what have you, but she's not in it that much, which was surprising. This is definitely a Julianne Moore vehicle, and for the most part, I gave it a 2.5 stars. The premise was there, but then there's some twists and turns, and once we get to that portion of the film when the daughter comes back into the picture and we have to get rid of the body and all it felt like a Tyler Perry film. It was just like the logic was kind of thrown out of the window, and it's just like it just went down a path that I wasn't the biggest fan of. But the thing that I did enjoy, even through the rough patch, was the performances, especially led by Julianne Moore. But it's just a lot of stuff which did not make sense once we got to the big reveals. But it is available on Apple TV Plus, and you don't have to go out of your home to see it if you have Apple. So it's something that I wouldn't necessarily recommend. But if you're into like B movies, it might be something you might enjoy. So before we move on, we're about halfway through the list. I want to take this time to thank you all for, number one, again, clicking on this video or listening to it on podcast. If you've enjoyed yourself thus far, do me a favor on the YouTube side of things, hit the thumbs up, consider sharing this video, but also sharing your thoughts in the comments on my list so far. If you've seen these films, if you haven't seen the films, if there's films that aren't on my list that you have seen, share those below, and also consider subscribing. And on the podcast side, leave your thoughts, hit a thumbs up, and consider following the podcast. So back into the list. The very next, I think it was the same day I saw this. I think I saw Echo Valley that morning, and later that night I saw this film, and that is How to Train Your Dragon, the live action edition. Now, I have seen the first two, or at least I saw parts of part two, but I've seen the first one, haven't seen the third one, but this is the live action, and this came with, some pushback from people that, and I'm an animation fan myself, love animation, but people felt like that by making a live action, especially with it only being out for 10, 12 years at this point, to make it so quickly, offended people, that they feel like, man, you can't just have the animation be its own thing. You have to remake it in live action. It takes away from the love that people have from it, which I don't agree with. Like, I think you can have live action and it doesn't erase the animated form, but neither here nor there. I'm not a diehard fan, so I was open to the idea. And look, as you all can see from my score here, I was pretty high on this movie. I think for my money, this is one of the better live action adaptations I've seen in a long time. I haven't had seen the original. It captures the essence of the film and the heart and the emotion, which I think a lot of the Disney live actions and just other live actions haven't been able to capture. Sometimes, Lilo and Stitch, for example, diverts from the original source material and it doesn't really fit the vibe and the overall tone of the film. So this one to me, while it was a beat for the most part, even though it's 20 minutes longer, it expanded on certain lore. It had a little bit more scenes to really flesh out the character a little bit more. So I don't think it's better than an animated film, but I do think it is a really well-made film, really great performances. It kept the heart and the emotion, it kept the amazing score, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I'm really excited to see what they do with the sequel again. I've seen parts of the sequel. I really don't remember that much about it. I believe they find more dragons and another Viking group of people that causes issues with them, I think, is the main storyline. I think something pretty big happens in the sequel. I think a character might meet their demise, if I'm not mistaken. But neither here nor there, I thoroughly enjoyed How to Train Your Dragon. I think it's doing pretty well at the box office. I don't think it's anywhere near the receipts that Lilo and Stitch has gotten, but I think it's going to round out to 650, maybe even, I think it's 6 to 650 is the final run that it's going to probably wish. But anyway, speaking of which, I don't even know why I said Wish because I guess I'm looking at my phone. But next film on the list was a film that's available on Shudder, and that goes by the name of Best Wishes to All. Now, this film, I believe, premiered at a bunch of independent film festivals a couple years back, but then it hit the U.S. market earlier this year, and then it hit streaming on Shudder. And this was a weird film, man. I don't even know. I'm going to read the synopsis. A young woman visits to her grandparents' home, leads to the discovery of what's brought them happiness, a revelation that will lead her to question her choices, sanity, and reality itself. Sounds interesting, right? And to be fair, there are some interesting elements to this film, but my goodness, I did not enjoy it. There's a certain tone and the eeriness the film goes for. It's almost like a dreamlike that we're experiencing this young lady visiting her grandmother. And the first half plays into the idea of there's something weird going on with her grandparents or what have you. But after a while, man, it lost me. It lost me. It's one of those films to me that it was weird for the sake of being weird. And I didn't really enjoy the performances. I understood what they were going for, but it was just too weird. It was just for the sake of being weird, and also way too many unexplained metaphors and allegories and just things that just felt just unnecessary to me, and it just fell flat on its face to me personally. Again, I know some people spoke a little bit higher on this film than I did, but I wasn't a fan. But hey, check if you're in a weird, and I should say I'm into weird stuff to a certain extent, but if you're into first off, I love Korean Asian cinema, but I always support that. But if you're into something that's a little bit challenging, I guess you can say, check it out on Shudder. And if you've seen it, or if you do check it out, let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. All right, next on my list, we're now in the deep end of the pool where I came across a patch of films that I just did not enjoy. The next one is Cleaner, which is streaming on, I believe is on HBO Max. Came out earlier this year in theaters, directed by Martin Campbell, who I know from his time in the 007 universe. He did one of my favorite Bond films, Casino Royale. Really good director. But man, I do not know what he was doing in this film. As well as, it stars Daisy Ridley, who I'm a fan of. And also it stars Clive Owen, which I'm going to tell y'all right now. False marketing. He's on the posters. He's in the trailer. The man is barely in the movie, and I won't explain why. But nonetheless, a lot of people compare this to Die Hard, which it essentially has a lot of Die Hard isms. Daisy Ridley is an ex-Marine. She takes care of her brother who's autistic. They lost their family or their parents early on, so she's taking care of him. So now she's working, which is just weird in general. She couldn't find any other job. But anyway, she's working at this really high-end Fortune 500 club where she cleans the windows. She cleans windows. She has to take care of her brother because he recently got kicked out of one of the schools he goes to. And long story short, these group of activists take over the building because the main guy, their business is really filled with corruption. The heist kidnapping goes wrong. She has to save her brother, save the people, and it's just a mess. It is a boring, very safe, this like snore fest. Very boring film, very puzzling because of all the pieces. Again, Martin Campbell, Clive Owen, again, who's barely in it, Daisy Ridley, who I like, who held her own. Like she's first off, she's outside for half of the movie, but once she gets inside and she does the combat, those scenes were entertaining, but oh man, this was just a really boring movie, paper thin story, and just some really terrible acting. Side of Daisy Ridley, I thought she was good, but everyone else was pretty bad. So really, it's the worst film of the year for me. I gave it a 1 star, 1.5 star, and that 1.5 was the 2 or 3 action scenes in Daisy, but everything else was pretty terrible. So again, another streaming movie, and this is HBO original by the name of Mountainhead. Now, this is brought to us by Jesse Armstrong, who I am a big fan of. I love, if you guys don't know, he was the creator, writer of one of the best shows of all time, if you ask me, and that is Succession. This is his directorial debut. A group of billionaire friends get together against the backdrop of a rolling international crisis. This is very much a Succession-esque type of film where we're following these group of friends who are millionaires to billionaires, tech company owners, pharmaceutical owners, all these AI creators, what have you, very well-off individuals. They go on this vacation. They do this annual, it seemed to be annual, or every couple years they do this. They meet up. They go to this cabin. During this particular weekend, there's this, one of the guys has this AI deep fake thing, and the news is being corrupted. There's a issue going on internationally. It's just, I don't want to give too much away because it's really not too much to give away. It's just it's like a cosplay of Succession. Like all these characters are very unlikable, very likable actors. Like I like Steve Carell, I like the cast, and again I like Jesse, but it felt like a pilot of Succession that never made it to air. It was just poorly paced. The jokes fell flat. Again, it's trying to, like, they're all, if you've seen Succession, they're all like Jeremy Strong type of characters, like Kindles, but they're trying too hard. And it's just, I didn't like them as a group. And again, I think one of the worst things is they're just not likable people. Like, it's hard to watch a 2-hour film for people you just don't like or care for. So I didn't like this movie at all. I hope Jesse gets more opportunities to direct more things with more substance and a little bit different from Succession. Like, just don't do a knockoff of something that was great. Not a fan of Mountainhead, but it is available on HBO Max, but I wouldn't recommend checking it out. But that's just my thoughts. The next 2 films are rewatches. I don't know why. I just was in the mood to watch Watcher, which, by the way, I don't have it as a rewatch. I always thought I saw the film. I never finished it. So I guess this is like a first time watch. Highly recommend it. It's available on Netflix. Really great film. Highly, highly recommend it. The next one was a rewatch in preparation for 28 Years Later. And I love it. Masterpiece. 28 Days Later was so great. But again, those aren't newer films. Those are just rewatches. But on to a new film, and that is the new Pixar film by the name of Elio, I should say, which unfortunately did not do well at the box office. As has been reported, it is the lowest opening weekend of any Pixar film. This one sucks, man, because I really, really enjoyed this film. I enjoyed the number one, the animation is gorgeous. I'm a big science fiction fan. I love the exploration of going to space and also following this character who doesn't feel like he belongs and is searching for friendship out of this world. And he finds that in the form of aliens. But same time, he has his auntie who's taking care of him because, classic Disney Pixar, the kid loses his parents early on in his life. But man, this was a really well-made film, beautiful movie, visually and from a narrative perspective, and I love the voice performances. But man, unfortunately, it did not do well. It's not doing well. Still in the theater, but a lot of people aren't taking the time to see it. And I think it's one of those situations where, not to sound like a broken record, but I think people have become trained to wait for some of these movies that they're on the fence with, especially original movies like Elio. And I think it's going to probably find its audience on Disney Plus, but unfortunately it did not do well. But it is a wonderful film that I thoroughly enjoyed. But Moving on to one of my favorite films of the year. It's been about 2 weeks since I saw it. We're talking about 28 years later, bringing back the dynamic duo of Danny Boyle and Alice Garland, starring Ray Fiennes, Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and a young man, I believe his name is Alfie Williams, who is essentially the lead of this film, who plays Spike. My goodness, I'm shocked. Well, I shouldn't say shocked. It is a pretty, almost, I don't want to say as divisive as Materialist, but maybe it is more divisive because people, either like myself, thoroughly enjoyed the filmmaking, the story, the performances, the ending, or people hated it all. Like, I think some people, from what I've gathered, some people were anticipating it to be more of a 28 weeks later, which was more action heavy than 28 days, which is not that action heavy. Like, there's some tense felt moments, especially there's one scene on the causeway where Spike and his dad are running away from this particular infected, known as an alpha. Beautiful scene, and there's other tense felt moments, but it's not like action like the sequel was. But I thoroughly enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the messaging. I enjoyed the compassion, the human side of the story. I like the switch in tone from following the survivalist side of a father and son to the hopeful, loving side with the mother and son. And it's just a really good film that I'm really excited to see what they do with it, with Nia DaCosta's film at the beginning of next year, which, speaks to the ending of the film, which I thought was pretty ballsy and very, punk rock and very much so in the Britain culture type of zeitgeist. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love this film, and it's, like I said, one of my favorite films of the year so far. All right, on to the final two of the month, new movies, and these are two movies I saw last week, back to back, if I'm not mistaken. Starting off with F1, directed by Joseph Krasinski, who we know directed a couple years ago, one of my favorite blockbusters of that year, in Top Gun Maverick. Also directed Tron Legacy and Oblivion. I think he might have did a couple other movies that I might have seen, but I've seen all those films I just mentioned. Love me some Top Gun Maverick, and that was the pitch, right? Top Gun Maverick in cars. And look, man, I guess I'm in the minority with this one. As you can see, I gave it a 3 out of 5, which is, a passable grade. I enjoyed it more than I didn't, but I didn't love this movie as much as everyone else did. Like, I'm seeing people calling this like their favorite film of the year, the most exhilarating film of the year, and to each your own, man. But it didn't really hit me on those marks. Like, I appreciate the filmmaking. I like the car racing sequences for the most part. And it is, I do agree with people saying that this kind of harkens back to like old school filmmaking, which was a gift and a curse to me because I think it relied a lot on tropes, a lot of tropes we've seen in sports movies, especially with race car films. It does play into, it's very 80s, 90s coded, Days of Thunder. And it just, all those isms and paying homage just kind of was overbearing for me. Like, I wanted something a little bit more original. I wanted something with a little bit more bite. I wanted more stakes. And I also wish the story, this is a two-hander because we have Brad Pitt as the main character, but also Damson Idris as the supporting character. I really wish they would have leaned more into like that Creed area where Brad Pitt is more of the retired racer trying to teach things to the young guy and let Damson be the lead of the film. But again, I know Brad Pitt's obviously the sell of the film, but I just feel like the split in the story just didn't really work for me narratively, because another issue that I had was, besides the script being very predictable and very kind of safe to me, I wasn't blown away by Brad Pitt. Like, I thought he was just doing his Brad Pitt thing. Like, this, I don't want to say he was on cruise control, but he didn't really bring much to the role for me personally. It was just very kind of, bare minimum. But I thought Damson was the star, and I really wish he had more to do. Carrie Condon was good, but they kind of reduced her to like a love interest, and she really had nothing else to do at a certain point. Javier Bardem, I wish he was in a little bit more. And it was just, like I said, I thought it was just fine. But everyone else, seems to think this is the film of the year. And I'm glad they thought that. It wasn't top movie for me, but it is, like I said, it's a passable film. But I didn't love it as much as everyone else did. But either way, last movie on the list, the most recent film I saw at the time of this recording, is Megan 2.0, which is another film that unfortunately is not doing well at the box office at all. I don't know if they're considering it a flop, but I think it is probably end up a flop considering that they increased the budget. Even putting that aside, I had fun with this film. As you all can see, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Like, I knew what I was going into. I don't know if a lot of people just anticipated being like a copy and paste of the first one, like a thriller slasher film. This is not that. This is an action comedy. And I think for me, Megan kind of fits more into that tone of an action comedy more so than a slasher. Cause I feel like with the PG-13, you really can't go to like Chucky levels of a killer doll. But I have fun with the comedy. Like, and comedy is very hit or miss for me, especially modern comedies. I like the jokes because I think Megan plays into the jokes a little bit more than being a serious character. I thought the action, not the greatest action movie. It's not John Wick or anything of the Raid, but I was surprised by the action sequences. Like, it reminded me so much of like Upgrade when it came to certain moments. And I just had a good time. Like, this is a film that knew what it was, that is, over the top at points, very self-aware. It has a little, some interesting commentary about AI and the reliance that we have on technology and AI and how it can be a detriment to society, what have you. So again, I know some people are really not a big fan of the tonal shift and really didn't like what the film had to offer this time around. But I had fun with it because, again, I can appreciate a B movie that is very self-aware, and I have fun with these characters. And I believe the next time we're going to be in this universe is next year, beginning of next year, called Soulmate. It's a spinoff. It's supposed to be like more of a thriller, an erotic thriller of a sex doll, I guess, this time around. And then I hope that we get a Megan 3.0, even though this one didn't do that well, because I like Megan. She was fun. I like Allison Williams. I like the young girl who plays Katie, and I just have fun with these films. So those are the 14 films that I saw for the month of June. And as you all saw, I heard my thoughts, but let's go and rank these films. Let's go ahead and get these films ranked up here. I don't think I had my screen record on during Megan, but let's go ahead and pull up my list. So starting from my least favorite to my favorite. My least favorite movie of the month of June and of the year is Cleaner. As I mentioned, I love Daisy Ridley. I like Martin Campbell, but this was a stinker. This was a fart box. This was a wet fart in the elevator. Very bad movie. Speaking of bad movies, disappointing because I like Jesse Armstrong from Succession, like I mentioned, but this movie was a cosplay of Succession, Mountainhead, unlikable characters, not a funny film, and just a pretty awful time watching this at home. Bringing up another home film, Best Wishes to All, available on Shudder, a film that I can appreciate the filmmaking, I can appreciate the eeriness and the tone it was going for, but narratively speaking, I was not connected to the story at all, and I thought it was just weird for the sake of being weird. Speaking of weird, because I love this director and these actors, The Materialists is a weird film that I just did not like at all, and weird in the sense of I was expecting more from the narrative and I just wanted more from the performances, and it just really fell flat, especially in that second half for me. So Materialists coming in next. Echo Valley, Apple TV Plus, a film that I was engaged with in the first half, but it kind of lost me once the twists and turns came about. Next on my list is Ballerina, a film that I enjoyed, even though it's coming in a little bit low on the list. A good action film with some solid performances, but unfortunately, it didn't work for a lot of the audience members out there. And it sure, narratively is predictable and has some shortcomings, but I have fun with it. Next on my list is a film that I know is probably higher on a lot of people's lists, especially when they do their roundups for the month, and that's F1. As I mentioned earlier, I like the filmmaking, some cool racing sequences. Damson was a star. I like Carrie. Brad was doing his thing, but it just so predictable, very cliched. It didn't really offer much to really lift itself up to being one of the better blockbusters this year for a lot of people. But I gave it more positive things to say than it negative, but it just didn't hit me as much as it did a lot of people out there. But surprisingly, a film that you would have asked me at the beginning of the month, which film would I had rated higher? Megan 2.0 was a film that I thoroughly enjoyed. I love the action, Terminator into Terminator 2, where the villain's now the hero. We go from a thriller, slasher horror film into an action comedy, and it worked for me on a lot of levels. It's not perfect by any means. It's very hokey and cringy at times, but I have fun with the self-awareness of it all. Next on my list is Elio. Elio. I keep saying Elio. Elio. Very much a beautiful, well-made animated film with a great message, great voice performances, but unfortunately, it came out at the wrong time of the year because a lot of people didn't see it. But I'm hoping that it's going to find its audience once it's available on Disney Plus. Next was a very surprising film, and that is Dangerous Animals. Like I said, it's Wolf Creek meets Jaws. Great performance, maybe career best by Jai Courtney, or at least from the films I've seen of his. Thought he was great. Loved the final girl. Just loved the film in general. Really good film. film, which should be available on streaming pretty soon. Next was How to Train Your Dragon, as I mentioned, one of the better live action adaptations I've seen, and a really well made film. It carries over the heart, the emotions, the beautiful score, the visual effects from the dragons was beautiful, and I'm really excited to see the next chapter. Next on the list, speaking of chapters, we have The Life of Chuck. Beautiful film, profound film, well directed, well acted, really great message. When you walk out of the film, you're feeling good about yourself, which is always a good thing. Next is a film that was streaming at home, and that's on Hulu, Predator, Killer of Killers. I love this movie. So happy that Dan Trachtenberg has the keys to the castle, and I can't wait to see what he does next. And my favorite film of the month of June, and one of my favorite films of the year so far, is 28 Years Later. I was blown away by the filmmaking, the story, the performances, the ending, which leads into the next film. I am just so high on this movie. Full review, you can hear my full thoughts. I did a spoiler breakdown on it too. One of the better films of the year so far for me. So that's my recap, mini reviews, thoughts, opinions, highs, lows, ranking of all of the movies I saw for the month of June. If you all enjoy this format, we might tweak it next time I do it. If I do it again, let me know in the comments. What do you all think about the format? Do you want to see me do these recaps every month? Let me know by liking, sharing your list in the comments below of the films you saw, all the new movies. How would you rank them? What movies did I not mention that you would recommend I should see? Let me know in the comments. Of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, subscribe and follow the podcast, which will be, again, available on podcast form. I'm ready for July, man. At the time of this recording, which it's technically the last day of June, I'm going to be seeing Jurassic Park Rebirth, Jurassic World Rebirth tonight. So if we do this again next month, it'll be in my July of the month. But I will be seeing that tonight, and seeing Superman on next Monday, and Fantastic Four somewhere at the end of the month, I believe. And then there's, of course, other things in between there. So I'm hopeful for a good month, and a really good month for the box office too. But thank you all for making it to this point of the video. As always, like, share, comment, like I said. Hope you all enjoyed it. Stay safe. You all are awesome, and I'll catch you all on the next video.